Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody, wherever you may be. I'm Marc Spiegler, and I'm going to be moderating this ArtTech Foundation panel on new forms of exhibition and retail. I'm joined today by Olivia Mull from Gagosian, Loïc Gouzer from Fair Warning, formerly still an auction house impresario, and Sebastian Errazuriz, who wears many, many hats, but we'll be talking today about his AR project. The topic of today's panel is art and tech and exhibition, but I think really what's interesting is that in the last 6 months, all of us who are interested in the overlay between these two topics, art and technology, have seen an enormous acceleration, a catalyzation of experimentation and innovation due to COVID-19. You know, the pandemic has forced us inside, has forced us off the road. It's also forced us to think about new ways of connecting with our clients and with the art world in general. So, you know, I can speak from my own experience about Art Basel, but I think what will be interesting is to see how these, how these four different perspectives intermatch. The format will be the following. We'll each do a short introduction talking about our projects and what they've been like over the last 6 months. Then I have a few questions for each of the panelists, or for the panel as a group rather, and then we'll take questions from the audience. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A button, and you can put in questions there that we'll be able to monitor and then try to get through all of. So I'll start with my experience. In January, late January of this year, I was in Hong Kong, and I was very confident that we would have a great show for Art Basel Hong Kong 2020. I left the city of Hong Kong at a time when the coronavirus was just barely a thing that you would read about in the papers, and seemed very much a thing that was limited to certain parts of China. Within 2 weeks, it had become what it is today, which is to say a global pandemic. It forced us to cancel the Art Basel Hong Kong show, and it forced us to accelerate plans that we'd been having anyway for a while, which is to say that we were going to do online viewing rooms. And these were originally conceived as something that ran in parallel to the fairs, that were overlaid on top of the fairs as a way to bring in a more engaged and vibrant way the work that was present at the fairs. We pivoted completely away from that because there was no fair in Hong Kong in March. And we offered instead to all of our galleries the possibility to show works in a virtual environment. And then similarly, because we were also forced to postpone and then to cancel the Basel show rather, we did a similarly scaled experiment or a platform for the Art Basel show. And then more recently in September and October, we did OVR 2020 and OVR 20C. The first was themed to have only works from this year. 20C was themed to have works from the 20th century. But what was interesting about them was not only that they were thematic, but also that we did a completely different approach. Instead of having 250, 280 galleries, we had only 100 galleries limited to 6 works each. And instead of being 10 days long, these events were 3.5 days long. So it was less an attempt to virtualize a fair and more the desire to kind of create the urgency and focus that you have in the art world, let's say around an auction, or in the commercial world around, a pop-up store or even a streetwear drop. I think the idea was to get people very focused on a limited number of works for a limited period of time and create the sense that there was an opportunity that could be missed, but also to create an environment that could be more easily digested and navigated by people, frankly, for whom a lot of time is being spent online anyway. So that was sort of our experience, and we learned a lot in the process. One of the things that was really interesting that we developed, and I have to admit that we stole it from some gallerists who were super creative, was what we call the VIP walkthroughs. And what we had seen during the first OVR for the Hong Kong show in March was that a group of galleries, 6 galleries, primarily from Asia, had set up a Zoom room like what we're in right now. And each gallerist had about 10 minutes to walk people through the works that were in their OVR. And what was amazing was that on the first day, when I showed up for this Zoom room, for a session that was in Mandarin, so of course I didn't understand it, there were 300 people who were actually watching the gallerists talk about the work and asking questions. And so we thought this was such a great idea that we stole it completely. And now, for our OVRs, we'll have dozens and dozens of these Zoom room walkthroughs where, it could be one of our VIP representatives, or it could be a VIP representative with, a curator or collector, someone like Troy Carter, the great African-American collector, or Joaquin Pissarro, the renowned expert, going through and talking with gallerists about what they have in the OVR. So I think it's a moment of real experimentation and development. And I think what's really important, at least from our perspective, and I'll ask the question later to the others, is we're trying not to do anything now that doesn't make sense post-pandemic. And there will be a post-pandemic period. But the idea is not to invest in bandages, but rather to invest in things now at this moment where we have the time and the focus to create new experiences or new ways of delivering the same experiences, and build things that will also make sense in the future. I asked Olivia to join this panel because I thought it'd be really interesting to talk about what Gagosian, which is one of the most powerful galleries in the world and one which is spread all over the world, and in a way is the most physical gallery in the sense that it has the most physical spaces, the largest physical spaces across the greatest number of continents and time zones. And yet I think has taken a very interesting approach in terms of how to deal with this pandemic period. So on that note, I'll hand over the microphone, so to speak, to Olivia, and you can tell us sort of how you have adapted and learned during this process.
Thanks, Marc. Yeah, so I am going to talk mainly about two of the online programs that Gagosian developed in response to the COVID crisis. The first one of these is an online sales program called Gagosian Spotlight. This initiative was really for artists who had physical exhibitions that were impacted. But the gallery very much felt that these exhibitions deserved to be opened, like when they could. And so the conversation was not really about replicating or translating exhibitions online, but it was about developing a program that suited our existing online channels. So mainly our website, newsletters, social, and that like translated well there, but also that stood out in the kind of like flood of works that went online. It felt very much like at that point in March that like everything went online very, very quickly. And we were trying to figure out a program that like worked and felt slightly different. So Spotlight was the solution. And the idea with Spotlight is that we focused on like one artist for 1 week. And during that 1 week, we released a work for 48 hours only towards the end of the week. And so by focusing on like one work, we were allowed to we allowed ourselves to like share and storytell around an artist and like really focus on them for like that particular period of time. And so I think to some extent, Spotlight was developed from two existing gallery programs. And the first one was our online viewing room. And the second one was the like gallery's existing editorial program, really. And Spotlight was like kind of a combination of both of those things. And I think in a way that allowed us to be reasonably nimble in the like response to like when everything went online, we were kind of able to draw on those things. Julie, can I have some slides, please? Can we go to slide 2, please? Okay, so this is obviously one of the projects in which Spotlight drew upon. So the gallery had been working in like the online sales space for a while. I mean, the online shop is almost a decade old. And the gallery had done a lot of work with group online viewing rooms. And this is kind of the biggest shift in the moment I want to focus on, was this online viewing room for Art Basel Hong Kong in 2019. And this was a microsite that focused specifically on one Albert Olin work. And the work sold for a record price, and it sold very, very quickly. And so Spotlight, in a way, by focusing on like one work, and it also for like a particular period of time, which is something that Marc mentioned, created a sense of urgency and almost like an auction-like response to presenting work online. And then secondly, we really created a lot of content for Spotlight. And the content, Judy, can I have the next slide, please? So the content that was created is across like a website, newsletters, and social channels. And we really worked with our artists to develop content, and in a way like opened up our online channels to artists to like speak directly to an audience. So there were lots of like takeovers on social, and in a way the kind of online content that we created was like a little bit more like intimate and freer. So it was like focused around one work, but there was like a whole week of content. And the project has been proven very successful. It's kind of enhanced. It feels like kind of a reconceptualization of like an exhibition, or enhancing a physical exhibition online by focusing on one work. And so it's something that we've decided that we'll continue to do through 2021. So we're going to do one artist for 1 week per month for the next year. And I think it's been successful in sales terms too. The excitement that we've created online around one work, which is like publicly released, has generated excitement and like private sales. So, I mean, we released over those 14 weeks, we released like 14 works publicly, but there were like, at least there were around 50 sales. And so often at a higher price point than the ones that we released publicly. So that's kind of one project, Spotlight. And then the second one I want to speak about is premieres. So this is the next slide, Julie. Okay, and so this one, in a way, was dealing with a different challenge. So this challenge was around fall, where we were able to open our physical exhibitions, but to a limited audience. And we wanted to really be able to celebrate these exhibitions online, and create like a collective opening type experience online, but reach a wider audience, because we were like definitely limited at this moment in time. And so Premiere was really a response to that. And it was also in a way a response to the fact that through lockdown, but also before, our video content had been like performing very, very well. And so it kind of combined that, those two like needs. And so what Premieres is it's like an online streaming series. And so we have created like 15-minute short episodes that are released and streamed online. And we invite our audiences like across different channels to tune in. And you know, there are additional components like live chat components with the artist. And this like opening type online experience where everyone is tuning in to celebrate the show is kind of what Premieres is recreating. It's also obviously very consumable content. 50 minutes is like a great length. They're very highly produced. The content itself has also been developed closely with the artists, and they're made up of different components. So we have worked with artists to invite different contributors. So Thurston Moore did a performance for Mary Weatherford's premiere. And then for Gregory Crewdston, it was Jeff Tweedy and Malcolm Gladwell, and Gregory had a conversation. And so we have kind of been able to bring together people from like different disciplines to celebrate the exhibition. There's always within each premiere like a component that takes place within the gallery space. So that was Thurston Moore's performance for Mary Weatherford's, and Elvis Mitchell did a walkthrough for Gregory's. And it's been great. I mean, we've got very good viewer numbers and like had amazing responses. And this is a project that we also feel like, as Marc said, has like great value beyond the fact that it's been created at this particular moment. And so those are really the kind of the two like biggest projects, the ones that I've been involved with on a like content side for the gallery in a few months.
Thanks, Olivia. It sounds like a lot of fun as well, which is not something which is to be taken for granted in this kind of period.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go over to Loïc. Loïc has an amazing history within the auction world. And then he left, and we all wondered what he was going to do next. But I think none of us anticipated that he would do the Fair Warning project. So Loïc, maybe you can jump in and tell us about that. And I think what's interesting is that both both Gagosian and your project, I think, really focused on the single work, whereas in general, the attitude of the art world has been to put as much in front of people as possible, kind of the sample platter approach. But I think the single work approach has worked well. But tell us, I'm curious also how you came up with the idea and what your thinking was behind it, if you're willing to share the origin story.
Yeah, no, it was a bit of more of an accidental project, I would say, because when I left Christie's, I wanted to take a bit longer to enjoy life, because I'm sure Gagosian and Art Basel, it's similar to Christie's. When you work there for 10 years, you're pretty tired. So I was planning to extend my my holidays for another 6 months, but then, you know, suddenly the pandemic arrived, and contrary to you, Marc, in December, I was already freaking out and thinking this was a black swan. So I basically organized myself like a complete prepper, to the point that when it actually arrived, I was expecting it, and I was ready, and I was very quickly very bored, because I had nothing to do and I had tons of soup to eat, and you know, I just had nothing to do. And then, so at some point you start thinking, what can we do? And I was in Montauk with my girlfriend, and also with her sister and her husband, and I was revisiting this old idea that I had while I was at Christie's, which was to start, you know, using Instagram and, you know, nascent social media platform to sell works off season. And I was thinking of doing it back then on my Instagram, but it didn't work for different political reasons. And then basically I said, let's take, you know, let's take advantage. I don't want to say advantage of the situation, but now if I want to do this, this is the right moment to do it. And at first we were like, you know, the whole auction world was stopped. Everybody didn't know what to do. Art was not moving, and there was no way to, you know, there was no transactions. And we were thinking of building a bit of a guerrilla type of operation, where we would rent a truck and then do auctions on Zoom, basically. And then when the work would be adjudicated, we would basically drive it ourselves to whoever would buy it. And that was a very primitive form of it. And then the sister of my girlfriend, who's much smarter and more literate in tech than I am, said, you know, we should do a full-on app. And I said, but an app takes a long time to do. And basically we worked for like 5 weeks nonstop, and we created this app, where with the idea of selling one work a week, ideally, but to make a bit of a difference with Gagosian, our idea was really to, you know, having been at auction houses where you, as Marc said, you have so much volume and so many works that you have to sell, and sometimes you don't believe in all of them. I like the idea to only sell works that I fully believe in the artist, fully believe in the quality. So it's at least for the moment, it's a very personal, I would say, curated selection, and that's I think the big distinction here, where I really try to only bring the works that I like. And but again, what was important was to create a sense of urgency, and especially with all the volume that is being sold all around the world, and then everybody trying to grab attention on many shows, and 350 lots being sold at Christie's and Sotheby's in a week. We were like, okay, we're smaller, but how can we do this differently? Our main weapon here, or differentiator, is focus. So when we have one work, this is all we have. And the way we build this app, basically, we're selective on the works that we show, but we also a bit selective on the client. So it's an app where you need to apply, and then we accept you. It's a bit like a club, and that was a bit to create an environment where a safe environment, where you don't have too many speculator, wheeler dealers, or people who just are not there for the right reasons. So so you have this platform where at the same time you have an auction that is going on, but also it's somehow private. Not everybody has access, so you keep the freshness of the art when you buy it, and that's a main differentiator. So of course it was a bit of a wild idea, and we had no budget. So the first work, and if you can show the Julie, the first slide, was a work by Stephen Shearer. It was very difficult at the beginning to explain this new concept to consigners because they didn't understand it. So I had to look very close to me. And in that case, this work belonged to my doctor. My doctor asked me for art advice, and I, like a 6 month, a year earlier, and I gave him some advice, and then basically suddenly I was desperate to find a first work to launch the platform, and I went back to him and I said, hey, could you give it back to me? And it was a bit push and tug of war, but he gave it to me. So then we had the first work, so we had an auction. At that point, we were also thinking of renting a space, and this is in my house in Montauk. That's where I spent the quarantine. And we were thinking of renting a space for the whole summer and to show the art. But then I was like, I'm not sure. This is a wild idea. I'm not even sure I can get the work. So we're going to go bankrupt in a week. So I decided to start in my garage, basically, which was the cheapest option. So we built a wall, and we had so you can see I have my surfboards, my spear guns, and all that. And it was a bit original, but it was fun because people would basically do the trip from all around the Hamptons to come and see the work. And during the quarantine period, this is where the highest concentration of collectors in the world was. So there we went, and after that, we started to get more and more works. And I can show you the platform if you go on the next slide. So just before the car, we just parked it there at night because we had to park the car somewhere, but we were very careful not to hit the paintings, and we had no accident. So just to reassure everybody. And then basically the platform is very, very simple. Once you apply, then you get accepted. It's just one work. So there's an example of the Julian Schnabel. You have that's the work shot in situ. Again, took advantage of my location in Montauk. Julian Schnabel is a neighbor. We had the work brought there. We had it shot in the studio and all that. So we played really with very guerrilla technique at the beginning, at least. So then you see on the left, you have that's the opening slide window on the app. And then it's very simple. You can click on the image, you see all the details. You can request a panel if you want to bid, schedule a viewing. That was in Montauk, if you want to do it in Montauk, or via Zoom, ask for a condition report. And then you can go to the next slide. Actually, you can go to the next one. Yeah. And then the day of the auction, so that's where the urgency component was so important and crucial to us. So we would put a work on a Thursday, and the work would be on view on the app and in our garage for a week. And then at 5 p.m. on a Thursday night, at 5 p.m. New York time, you would have the auction. And that's the difference there again with auction houses, is that there's no absentee bid, there's no pre-bid, there's no bids happening during the whole week, which is customary with auctions. You have to be there, and if you snooze, you lose. So you have to be on your phone, and if you want to bid, you just have to swipe. And so the auction started exactly 5 p.m. sharp, and then the bids would come in, and then when you want to bid, we would you swipe, and then you can see on those slides you can see the different panels numbers bidding, and then it is still very I would say instinctive. After a while, if we see that the bidding is slowing down, we cut the bid, and then if it really slows down, we send our fair warning, and then the work is sold. So if you go back to the next slide, you can see that it's we're maybe a startup that you could see from the garage. Everybody starts in their garage, and there's definitely a bit of tech, but there is not that much computer machinery behind. This is my girlfriend on the left. Next to me is the CFO and also the auctioneer. So he's behind the computer during the auction at 5 p.m. Accepting the bids. And that's where it was all happening during the lockdown. And now if you go back 2 slides back, yeah, here we can show you all the lots that we sold, and again, most of them are very personal artists that I really like. You know, it's a bit, I would say, my aesthetic. Not all the, you know, sometimes we, you know, especially we have to do also what the public wants. I tend to like to do difficult works that are more pointu, I would say. So we also had some commercial hits like George Condo and Jonas Wood, but also much more, you know, obscure and works like Clara Lydon and you know, even Stephen Shearer, who people don't know, or Stephen Perino. And then on the left here, you see the Basquiat that we sold, which was the 4th lot that we sold so pretty quickly now, literally, you know, a few weeks after we started the app, and that was to push the boundaries, which I try to like. I wanted to see how high we could go on an app, and we sold this work for $11 million, which we didn't know at the time, but was actually the most expensive object or anything sold on an app. So that was pretty interesting.
Loïc, I'm gonna have to hop away from you to Sebastian just so we don't have time. But I mean, it's an interesting mark. One quick question, like how long do these auctions take?
So the auctions literally last between up to 3 minutes, like a regular lot. It's like and it's
like a real, okay.
Yeah. So if you're late, you
lose. All right, Sebastian, you did not snooze or lose during the quarantine. So tell us about your project, which is very different than either mine or Olivia or Loïc's.
Sure. So I have a startup that's focusing on creating art and design solutions in augmented reality for galleries, fairs, etc. And we're creating our own platform. Because basically, Marc, Loïc, Olivia are the best in the world, period, in what they do. Nevertheless, everyone's continuing to function within the old model of the system. The old model is basically you need a real estate location that is prime and very expensive, and you need to pack it with as much artwork as is tastefully allowed, and then you need to be able to sell all that so you can pay your overhead, an overhead that includes packing, shipping, insuring, transporting, installing, promoting, throwing parties, etc. The fastest a gallery can do that is basically once a month. The fastest or more sufficient that a fair can do it is basically 3 times a year. If Art Basel could do it 6 times a year, they would be doing it 6 times a year. And so the problem of exhibition is an enormous one because it generates a series of issues. The first one is that an artist needs to be able to generate enough work to be able to pay for the overhead of a monthly cost. That means that in general, an artist only gets to show their work once every, say, 2 to 3 years in an individual solo show in a gallery. That makes no sense in today's era, right? At the same time, that means that all of that extra cost needs to be passed on to someone. That someone is the collector. So the collector gets something like a 50% increase in the amount of the cost of what they're supposed to purchase, which in turn reduces the size of the collector base. Now, we're in a global era. Let's suppose that past this year, that nothing sold, and past, let's suppose next year again, due to COVID, there's no real art fairs or no real shows. Let's hope not, but let's suppose that's the case. we would expect an increase, right, of people finally being able to go to art fairs and gallery shows and so on. But it's only going to last a little, because technology has disrupted everything, because the rich who are collectors continue to have less and less time. They continue to have a more similar taste, and they want things in a more efficient manner. So what we're trying to propose is that we get to use as an extra tool augmented reality. Now, very quickly, virtual reality and augmented reality, VR and AR, are different things. Virtual reality is when you see someone with a giant headset, it's almost like having a phone strapped to their face, that no longer sees their environment. They no longer see their friends or people. They only see this virtual reality. Augmented is enhanced. Augmented is your reality that is enhanced with new content. So the good thing of augmented reality is that you get to share it with others, whether it's through your phone. Already there's 1 billion phones that are AR ready, an iPad, or eventually the glasses that are coming out. You see your space, that's actually my table, and you get to see a piece life-size, as if it was there, with its own shadow that captures and reflects the light as if it was literally there, and you get to test it. Now, that's incredible, because up to now, every single important gallery has to incur sometimes in costs of shipping a work to a client so they can see it in their home. Imagine if instead I can see every single artwork I want in the context of my home, and as superficial as it might seem, I can see it next to my curtains and my sofa and my other possessions and see how it looks. That makes the buyer feel more satisfied and tranquil with what they're purchasing. It reduces the amounts of returns, and it makes for an experience that can be equally exclusive. But on the other hand, it can also be opened up to everyone. So if you think about it, the giant art world in its entirety as a global market, even at its most efficient, is the exact same size of America's dog food market. That's as big as it currently is. Nevertheless, we all know that the love for the arts goes way beyond the love for the dog food market in the US. We've all seen Kusama exhibitions that have lines that go around the corner, in which those people are only waiting there to be able to take a photo, because none of them can actually acquire a work. So in a way, for us, this is a no-brainer. We are creating tools that have a series of advantages. The first is that there's no app needed. So you don't need to download one extra app. It's web-based app. The second is that we provide links, platforms for anyone. So if Art Basel or Gagosian wants to have their own content inside their own page, they can have it. So their clients don't need to leave their page. They just get to have a link generated that allows them to see a piece in augmented reality within their own iPad or their own phone, having passed all the necessary requirements that you would need to be a part of this. And then the other very important thing is that we're creating the AR versions for others, because this is a huge part of this. We have to remember that today a 3D scanner is relatively complex, but there's 3D mobile scanners for phones that are almost there yet. In the meanwhile, what we do is I have a team of amazing designers and artists that can recreate based from photos, sculpted just as if it was physically there, even with the little grime and scratches. And so we have that service. The service is relatively cheap. And if you check afterwards for stats in terms of how much more sales happen when there is augmented reality, you will find that in everywhere from the makeup industry to the automobile industry to the furniture industry, there's already stats that are rounding around the 30% increase in the ability to make a sale when you can actually use augmented reality. So for us, it's the future. For me, as an artist and a designer, it's the democratic platform. And I believe genuinely that the art world is so much bigger than the current art market, and that it is through augmented reality tools that we will continue to be able to grow this. And just as a quick final idea, it is not if you include augmented reality, it's when. Because 5 years from now, you won't even buy a toaster or a coffee machine for your kitchen if you can't first check it on your kitchen counter through augmented reality. Therefore, to incorporate it now in a high valued object as an artwork or a limited edition design is a minimum investment that can bring in return an enormous increase in opportunity. And it also allows you to differentiate yourself from everyone else, because an online viewing room for now, or an app that presents something for now, are just images. They're just videos. It's just web pages. Augmented reality really changes everything. Final idea. Up to now, AR has been very gimmicky. It's been limited. It's been shitty. The experiences haven't been the best. We're trying to bring taste, quality, some degree of refinement. I understand the world of the arts and the world of design. And so we can provide a very decent solution that is already very good. Come in 1-2 more years when 5G is actually working much better, when AR continues to improve, when every single one of us has an 3D scanner in our mobile phone. This is the way of the future, and it's an extra tool. I'm not saying that AR will replace the art fair or the gallery opening, but it is a vital extra tool that will be a normal part of every single art experience in the future.
Great. We're running close to time. These have been fascinating presentations, but I want to maybe just a quick question to all of you. When I think, Loïc, about sort of what the auction houses have done, which is to sort of transform what used to be experiences in auction house, in auction rooms, you know, with phone banks, and they've made these sort of reality TV shows out of auctions. You know, these sort of live, very choreographed performances with multiple angles and stuff. I have a hard time imagining how you would do that in the future while still staging auction room sales. I mean, unless they sort of build the auction room as a TV studio. And I'm curious, you know, in general, you know, there's an expectation that sometime in the middle of next year, there'll be a vaccine, things will start to calm down, travel restrictions will lift. I mean, how much of what we're seeing now in general do you think will carry over into the future, and how much of it is kind of a transitional solution? Maybe I'll start with you, Loïc. You know, do you see as what you're doing now as something that will continue forever? Do you see it as something that's more specific to the moment?
So to answer your first question, with Christie's and I wouldn't be surprised that they try to keep it that way. I'm saying that because when I was at Christie's, we were already wondering why people would, you know, come and sit through all those auctions and this whole ritual, and we were already thinking of like trying to like make the sale rooms smaller and more of it over the phone. One thing also is that the catalogs have always been a hindrance for auction houses, because it limits their time to between the time they produce the catalog and the time they have the work. It just cuts their time to bring works together. So we've been trying to get away from catalogs for a long time. So I wouldn't be surprised that auction house get rid of the catalogs per se, because now people are used to see everything online. And then I think that they may be from the auction house a push to stay that way, because that's less operational nightmare to have 500 people coming at night and installing and deinstalling. But I do think that it's going to be hard, because I do think that part of the fun of art is still the social component, the hanging around, what has been from the Middle Ages, I guess, the hanging around in a marketplace. And that's why if I had to place a bet on fairs and auctions as a place to meet and laugh and mingle, and all the stuff that has also nothing to do with the art, but is where the art is a pretext for all that, and that's what makes art great. I do believe that it's not going to go away, and perhaps going to come back with a vengeance. I do think that if we get a vaccine, your fair attendance is going to triple, because people are desperate to have contact.
I think that you're right. Olivia, what's your view on the post-pandemic approaches, future perspective, both specifically for the gallery, but in general?
I agree that there's going to be this like craving for like the physical and the analog, you know, regardless, like as soon as possible. So I think that the digital experiences that will continue are those that like enhance and like offer something that like you potentially can't get in the physical. And so I think that at least for the projects that we've developed, like the thing of presenting one single work and offering like a lot of content around it and really focusing, it's like quite difficult to do physically within like a hang of one exhibition. And so that's something that's like we're able to do and we will continue to do. And with premieres, I mean, not that these things couldn't have happened previously, but being able to have very beautifully produced conversations across like multiple different locations with people from different disciplines on the occasion of an exhibition opening is something that like we've now entered into the space of, and I think will have like incredible value even when everyone wants to go but to an opening, you know, that's like an additional celebration that it has great value for artists and audiences like around the world too.
I think the reality is that there will always be people who can't make it to the openings that we would have loved to have there. And in the same way, there will always be people who can't make it to the fairs. So I fully expect that when the fairs return, ideally with the vengeance of which Loïc spoke before, that there will still be people who can't come, and that our galleries will be doing VIP walkthroughs of their booths, you know, for the people who aren't there. I mean, certainly will allow people to stay, you know, to stay before the show or after the show in order that they can show their booth to all the collectors who aren't there. I mean, Sebastian, your focus is more on sort of layering the digital on top of the physical. So I'm curious whether, I mean, this is something you did during the pandemic, but not because of the pandemic. And I'm curious how you see, if anything, a change for what AR means when people start traveling again. In a weird way, it'll even be better because there'll be more places, but they won't just be at home projecting things onto their walls.
Sure. So I agree that everyone wants the physical relationship, and you want that excitement of being in an opening with a series of people that you admire and like. Nevertheless, what's naturally going to happen is what's happened all across the board due to technology and a globalized market. There's just going to be less players. So there's going to be a much less galleries that are actually the ones that get the rest. It's a kind of winner takes all scenario. And within that, there's going to be a need for other types of tools that allow people to be able to experience things. Now, if you think about it, when you go to a Kusama show, people go to capture a moment that is their own personal moment on their phone, almost like a souvenir that actually seems to matter more to them than the actual experience they had while being there. It was the ability to be able to show with their social crowd, right? And it's not that different from a TikTok video. It's not that different from a YouTube video. So there's also that need to participate for people. Now, I designed the VIP lounge for Art Basel for Audemars Piguet for 3 years. I know the amount of money and how difficult it is to do that. I also know what's the quantity of people that get to experience it and what was the cost per head. Now that cost per head would be much more interesting if you could multiply it with other tools, AR tools, digital tools that could allow everyone around the world to suddenly be sharing the same experience, maybe not in real life, that the VIPs get to see in real life, but they get to see digitally, and they get to participate of, create their own original content with it, and feel they're a part of it and be able to share it. That is only in benefit of the fairs, of the companies, of the products, of the brands, of the artists that participate.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting when we go across all of this is, on the one hand, we're all saying the physical is important. And I think on the other hand, what we're saying is that the digital can create another layer which enriches the experience, even of the people who are there, but especially for the people who can't be there. We have run out of time. I want to thank Olivia, Loïc, and Sebastian for all of your interesting presentations and perspectives. I want to thank the ArtTech Foundation for hosting this, and I want to thank all the people who watched us. I'm sorry we didn't have time for questions, but that's what happens when you have fascinating speakers. So on that note, ciao. Enjoy the rest of the
Thanks so much.
Symposium, and good night, good evening, good morning. Bye-bye.
So much.
Thank you.
Ciao.